And for that, I listened to the embryologist. The embryologists know already for many decades, because embryology is not a very old science. It started in the beginning of the last century, at the end of the 19th century. And quite soon, the embryologists discovered a gradient. I would say polarity, but they called it a gradient. And that is the cranial caudal gradient, head versus your caudal end. And they found there a gradient, a development gradient. What do I mean? They discovered, and it's not only true for humans, it is true for all, let's say, higher animals, that the head, your cranial region, in the development, is always ahead of the development down there. I cannot show you now all the examples, but one important example is that your hands are always further in development, and your hands and your arms are earlier ready, so to say, than your legs and your feet. When your hands have already fingers, like you see in the slide you can see that your hand has already fingers. Your foot does not have fingers yet. It has radii. So the hand is always ahead. It are difficult words for the translator. The hands are always ahead in development, ahead to the legs, because the legs are caudal. What are the oldest nerves you have? What are your first nerves? Stephen Porges will be happy. The first nerves are your cranial nerves. And the first one is the optic nerve, which is not a nerve actually. The eye is not a sense organ, but okay. Optical nerve, and then comes the facial nerve, and then comes the vagus nerve, and then come the spinal nerves and the thoracic nerves. Again, you see a cranial caudal gradient. And everything in the head region seems to be ahead of everything in development in the caudal region. We go to the slide. I discovered that you can find something else in this gradient. And for that, and it may sound very strange, I started to compare an organ as brain with a liver. Don't do that at a university. If I would propose my colleagues to compare a brain with a liver, well, they would say, Jaap, you're lost. What has a liver to do with a brain? Nothing. No? Maybe there are polarities. Because brains and livers are both heads. Brain is the head of your consciousness, of your mind. Liver is the head of your metabolism, is the head of your abdomen. Every substance that you eat, that you breathe, it is controlled by the brain. The brain is a head organizing your metabolic state. And the brain is organizing your mental state of your consciousness or your whatever. So, but the head is typically head, and the liver is more abdominal. It's an abdominal head. So maybe it teaches me something when I compare the two. I will do this very rapidly now, because I lack time. But if you come to the course, we will do it extensively, we will do it together, we will do exercises. Very rapidly, I will show you that there is a deep, deep polarity of head versus cauda. And the important thing is that both are head, so to say, but that dominating in the brain is form, anatomy, structure, space. All the neurophysiology is about where. All the neurophysiology is about which are the connections, how are the connections between your frontal lobes and your hippocampus and whatever. It's all about structure, form. Where is it? It's absolutely the anatomy. It's absolutely structure, form. Nothing moves there. There are signals and there are electrophysiological impulses. It's a magnificent orchestra of electrophysiological impulses. We can hardly understand the music that the brain is producing. But it's very complex, it's very complicated, and it's about anatomy. The liver not. The liver is a formless organ. Look at me. Show me the slide. When I would make the gesture of brain, can I have a camera mode? Can I have a camera mode? Thank you. When I would mimic the gesture of brain, you get this, making connections. Billions of synapses on connections. That's brain, structuralized. If I would show you the gesture of a liver, then you would see that the liver grows. It expands. It becomes larger and larger. And then it comes against the stomach, against the diaphragm, against the gut, the kidney. And then it stops. It fills the space. It is formless. It doesn't have an own structure. It is formlessness, and it just stops when it meets another organ. That's why we all have different livers, because the space we have available for the liver is in everybody different. And during your life cycle, also the space that your liver gets will change. So livers can enlarge and become smaller. So liver is a formlessness where the brain is typically structuralized. Come to the slide. So you could say that brain is dominated by form, complexity. It's very complex. It takes 2 centuries more of neurophysiology before we überhaupt understand the universe that the brain actually is. This is anatomically simple. There is no typical brain liver cell. The neuron is a typical nerve cell with all the branches. There are neurons with 700 synapses or 7,000 dendrites, and then you have billions of these neurons, and together they make a network. Complexity, unbelievable. In the liver, it's all very simple. The cells are very simple. They can be cuboidal. They can be like meatballs. They don't have a very specific form, but they are physiologically, they are so complex. The neuron is a very dumb cell. The neuron can only switch on and off. That's all the neuron can. And he even forgot how to reproduce, how to grow, how to feed itself. The neuron is completely dependent of what? Of the glial cells. 50% of your nervous tissues are not neurons, but the glial cells. And the glial cells and the neurons together, they work together. And the neurons are completely dependent from the glial cells, because the glial cells, we animate them constantly when they depolarize. It's the only thing a nerve cell can do. Depolarize, repolarize, depolarize, switch on and off, that's all. But a liver cell, every liver cell can perform at least 200 different biochemical pathways. Every liver cell knows what to do with cholesterol, with glycogen, with glucoses, with hormones. It's very complex physiologically, but anatomically it's not very complex. The brain, yes, the nerve cells, they are very complex in form, but they're very simple in function. And there's another thing. In liver, you deal with vitality. There you deal with life, with multiplication of cells, with growth, with repair, with regeneration. When you have an hepatitis, you might die because you cannot live without your liver, but you can repair it. It is a vital organ. And if they transplant a liver, they give one liver to 4 different acceptors because the liver is growing and regenerating constantly. The brain has completely lost that. The brain is a dead organ. Believe it or not, it is a nearly dead organ. It's on the edge of what is possible. It needs a lot of oxygen, I know, but it's for its function. But the brain itself, the cells itself are non-vital. They cannot repair. When you have a brain stroke in your cortex, you cannot regenerate new cells. Nowadays we can do it with the stem cells, but that's another story.